In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praise is due to the Lord, Master of all the worlds. And peace and blessings be on all his prophets, and especially his final prophet, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here to represent the 10th day. And what a day. The 10th day of Muharram is a day that has influenced the lives of many a pivotal personality in history, has mesmerized many a great mind and a great thinker. Indeed, each and every one of us here in this hall has been affected in one way or the other by the events of the 10th day. There's not one of us who hasn't been inspired by the 10th day, by the figures of the 10th day, the personalities and the words of the 10th day. Every single one of us can remember, even from our childhood, how that 10th day was entrenched in our upbringing. I can certainly remember from a young age the 10th day of Muharram being a day where you'd wake up early in the morning. Your parents would take you towards the mosque. You'd hear the masa'ib of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and there'd be a sense of sadness. And indeed, the day would continue until you return in the night to remember the tragedy of the night of the 11th. Every single one of us, whether we are religious or not, made sure that we never missed the 10th day. When you looked at each of us, even those of us who weren't coming to the mosque the whole year, would never forget the 10th day. The 10th day for all of us was the most important day. The person who you'd see who's not that religious would be there on the 10th day. The person who you'd never see the whole year would be there on the 10th day. The person who didn't know much Quran and not much Hadith would be there on the 10th day. That 10th day would be a day every single one of us would make sure that we turn up. But many of us take this 10th day for granted. Indeed, the fact that the 10th day of Muharram is celebrated on a night like this, and the fact that there's an organization named after the 10th day, is a miracle in itself. There is no day in Islamic history and no event like the event of Karbala that has been the victim of propaganda and attacks. It is a miracle that we are here remembering the 10th day, considering that very day has been the victim of lies, and the followers who come on that 10th day to honor the Imam have been the victims of the most malicious propaganda. In my own lifetime as a lecturer, I've been a witness to the malicious lies against the 10th day. And the reality is, many of us do not realize that there has been a great amount of blood that's been shed, a great amount of sweat and tears, just to make sure that each and every one of us here today is able to remember the 10th day of Muharram. Never take the 10th day of Muharram for granted. Because believe you me, there have been many lives lost just to make sure that you could have an event known as the 10th day. There have been many scholars whose fingers became paralyzed from writing about the 10th day. There have been many who became martyrs in the cause of the protection of the 10th day. When today you come to honor the 10th day, you are coming to continue the legacy which makes sure that everybody goes but Imam al-Hussain stays. We are continuing the legacy of personalities who gave everything away in order that the 10th day of Muharram became a day influential in all our lives. Where would we get our principles from except the 10th day of Muharram? Where do we get all of our morals from except the 10th day of Muharram? But you who comes in the year 2015, do not imagine that that 10th day of Muharram came to you easily. There are many who had to sacrifice from their health, sacrifice from their wealth, sacrifice from their families, so that today you can have an event known as the 10th day. In my own lecturing career, I remember 3 different examples of how they tried to destroy or tried to attack the 10th day. The first example I remember was one of my first Muharrams that I gave in Cape Town, South Africa in 2004. It was probably the second or third Muharram that I had given the 10 nights. I was in Cape Town. It's one of the most beautiful communities of followers of Ahlul Bayt that you will ever find. The whole community in Cape Town, South Africa are all reverts. There's not one person who's born in the school of Ahlul Bayt. They're all reverts. Because of Ayatollah al-Khomeini and the stand that he had against apartheid, many of these people were inspired to come towards the path of Ahlul Bayt. When I was lecturing over there, I remember around night 6 or night 7 of Muharram, we were in the car going towards the Majlis. There's a radio station in South Africa, in Cape Town, called Voice of the Cape. Voice of the Cape discusses different Islamic issues. Would you believe in that very radio station, there was an advert? What did the advert say? 50% of all wedding bookings, 50% of the price of all bookings made on the 10th day of Muharram. Anyone who wants to get married on the 10th day of Muharram, 50% of the whole for the weddings. I couldn't believe that in South Africa, in Cape Town, they were giving discounts so people get married on the 10th day. You'd think that on the 10th day, they would remember Imam Hussain, they'd remember the martyrs from the family of the Holy Prophet. No. Booking a hall, if you book it any day, it's the normal price. But when you book it on the 10th of Muharram, 50% off the price to encourage more and more weddings on that day. That's number one. Number two, I remember a book which was produced in the time of Diya al-Haq. When he was leading Pakistan, there were books after books after books which sought to attack the 10th day. Of these books, there was a book called The 12th Months. It looks at each of the months in the Islamic calendar. Do you know what it had written under the 10th day of Muharram? You would think that it might write something like, Hussein was martyred, family of the Prophet went through oppression. Do you know what was written under the Muharram? This is when a group gather to pretend that they remember Hussein, but in reality, they switch off the lights in their gathering and all fornicate and commit adultery with one another. In Pakistan, in the 80s, there were villages of youth brought up on the idea that the 10th day of Muharram is a day of nothing more than the Shia gathering together. They switch the lights off. As you know, we switch the lights off in mourning. But no, these youths were taught that what we're actually doing is committing zina with one another. That was the second thing. The third thing which I remember was the Mufti of Syria. If many of you remember that YouTube clip, when the Mufti of Syria said, why have you lied to us about the 10th day? Why all these years did you not tell us the truth? Why did you make Hussein a Shia issue when Imam al-Hussein belongs to the whole of humanity? I'm sure many of you saw that YouTube clip. Those three things taught me that the 10th day reached us through a lot of malicious lies, through a lot of difficulties, and through a lot of sacrifices. And tonight is your chance to be amongst those people who sacrifice to make sure the 10th day will never be forgotten. Do you know the reason we have the 10th day? Look at how they tried to attack the 10th day. From the very beginning, they tried to attack the 10th day in their different ways. Because as soon as the 10th of Muharram was over, Yazid and his government knew one thing. If we let the 10th day be known, and the events of Karbala be known, and the reality of Karbala be known, that will be the end of our empire. From the very beginning, they tried to belittle the 10th day. They knew that the 10th day is the only day in the Islamic calendar where religious and non-religious will turn up to the mosque. Yes, they knew that that day was so powerful. So do you know how they started? They first started by doing what? They first started by belittling what happened in Karbala. Ibn Ziyad, standing in front of Sayyida Zainab in Kufa, he looks at her and he says to her, what do you think of what God done to your brother on the 10th day of Muharram? Yes? This is where the beginning of the 10th day movement occurred. We are continuing that moment in Kufa with Zainab's flag being held aloft over here. He looked at her and he said, what do you think of what God did to your brother? She replied with the most beautiful reply, which highlighted that we actually were victorious on that day. When someone says that to you, when someone says, what do you think of what God done to your brother? You'd think that the emotion may overtake you. You'd think you may come back rudely. But the granddaughter of Rasulullah comes back in a phenomenal way. Do you know how she comes back? She replies with the most famous line, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." I saw nothing but beauty on the 10th day. It's a phenomenal day. My brother maintained his discipline with arrows all over his body. He maintained respect. He forgave the person who blocked water from his children. He gave water to his horse before drinking the water himself. At that moment, Zainab showed one thing, that Ibn Ziyad, you and your soldiers will forever try to stop the 10th day. And me and my sons will forever and my daughters protect the 10th day. From that Zainab, the Umayyads realized, Zain al-Abidin, their protection of the 10th day was phenomenal. So what did they start doing? Suddenly, the second way to try and attack the 10th day movement and the events of the 10th day was to fabricate traditions about the 10th day to divert people's attention. Yes? How many of you here on Ashura, and I want a show of hands, how many of you on Ashura have friends from other schools in Islam who believe that the 10th of Muharram is a day of fasting? Yes? Hands up. How many of you remember your friends telling you, this is a day of fasting? What you guys doing? And you're like, what do you mean fasting? They're like, yes. The Prophet entered Medina and when he saw the Jews fasting, he said, I have a greater right than Moses. The second method which they used was what? The second was to try and fabricate traditions. That the 10th day is the most important because of the day of the fasting on Ashura. It's a day of celebration. And would you believe there are Muslims in the world who still take this tradition until now? When it comes to the 10th day, the Umayyads done a very, very unique thing. They thought, you know what? If you can't defeat them in terms of Zainab and Zain al-Abidin, then make traditions which make the people forget Karbala. And subhanallah, you saw a movement that occurred where today people will come on the 10th day and they'll fast on Ashura. And again, you would find the Imams of Ahlul Bayt replying back to them. Then the third way was what? Let's hijack the 10th day. In which way? If now we tried with the fabrication of the fast on Ashura, if it's not working, and we tried to hurt Zainab, but Zainab replied back with unbelievable discipline, so let's hijack it. How did they try to hijack it? Let us use Karbala to be the motive for our revolution. That we want someone from Ahlul Bayt to rise instead of the Umayyads. Yes? And that was what the Abbasids done quite cleverly. The Abbasids turned around, they said, listen, the Umayyads have tried two tactics. They're not working. We'll try a tactic. The 10th day is a sad day. A member of the Prophet's family is dead. These Umayyads are the reason. We Abbasids will be the ones who will make sure that we come and avenge what happened. No, we from the Ahlul Bayt. When they overtook the Umayyads, all of a sudden they were told, okay, give the authority to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. They turned around and said, what do you mean Imam al-Baqir? Yes, but Imam al-Baqir is the sole survivor of Karbala. Yes? Imam al-Baqir was 3 years old at Karbala. Now he's much elder. You people have come into power. They replied by saying, no, we're the ones who will take this government. They took the 10th day, but they hijacked it for their own reasons. And that truly is where it all comes down to. There are those who hijack the 10th day for their own reasons. There are those who fabricated traditions against the 10th day. And there are those who tried to hurt Ahlul Bayt about the 10th day, but the Ahlul Bayt replied with discipline. The Imams, seeing all of this, recognized if we allow any of these three to permeate, then people will forget the 10th day. So the Imams began to focus on the importance of remembering the 10th day and on the importance of honoring the 10th day and honoring Sayyid al-Shuhada in particular, Imam Hussain alayhi salam. How? What did they start doing? They started telling their followers, even if it means you lose limbs, even if it means you lose your life, even if it means you lose all your wealth or you have to save money, never stop remembering the 10th day and never stop visiting Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. On the first level, you find Imam al-Sadiq, they asked him about ziyarah on the 10th day. Someone said to him, how many ziyarah should we perform? He said, someone who is our lover will come to visit us twice a year. The person turned around, he said, but Imam, twice a year is expensive. He said, then save money on other things so that you come to visit us twice a year. Yes? From the very beginning, he knew we can make many excuses, but make sure that you don't forget the 10th day. He would tell them, save money, go and honor the 10th day. Then he would write supplications in honor of those who make an effort to remember the 10th day by walking there, by going there, by traveling there. He would write a supplication in their honor. There is a supplication of Imam al-Sadiq for those who honor the 10th day, for those who honor Sayyid al-Shuhada and try and visit him, which is the most beautiful supplication. And this affects all of you here, because all of you could be part of that supplication. This, in my opinion, is Imam al-Sadiq's most beautiful supplication. Yes? There are other wonderful supplications of Imam al-Sadiq. The taqibat after Salat al-Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib, Isha, all Imam al-Sadiq. But there's a particular supplication Imam al-Sadiq wrote for those people who never forget the 10th day and will always go to visit Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Do you know what he says in the supplication? He says, Allahumma ghfirli wa li ikhwani wa zuwar qabri Abi Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam. Oh Allah, forgive me and my brothers and those who perform the ziyarah of Hussain alayhi salam. You know, in those days, to perform ziyarah and Ashura, your limbs are going to be cut, yes? It's not like today. Today we may go ziyarah, alhamdulillah, you touch down at Najaf airport and you are able to get to Najaf and then you can walk to Karbala quite safe. In those days, Imam al-Sadiq knew how dangerous it is. He didn't care. It does not matter. The 10th day can never be forgotten. And the master of martyrs can never be forgotten. He said, Allahumma ghfirli wa li ikhwani wa zuwar qabri Abi Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam alladhina anfaqu amwalahum, those who gave away from their wealth to go and see him, wa ashkhasu abdanahum, and put their lives in danger for him. Understand this line. الذين أنفقوا أموالهم وأشخصوا أبدانهم رغبة في برنا ورجاء لما عندك في وصلتنا. The reason they do this is because they love us and they want to maintain their relation with us from far away. Then he says, فارحم تلك الوجوه التي غيرتها الشمس. Oh Allah, have mercy on those faces burnt by the sun to remember the 10th day. Yes? When you go to Karbala, the sun, the heat of the sun is going to burn the face. He says, oh Allah, have mercy on the faces that remember the 10th day and they are burnt by the sun on the way to Karbala. Warham, what else? وارحم تلك الخدود التي تقلب على ضريح أبي عبد الله. Oh Allah, have mercy on those cheeks that rub themselves on the grave of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. وارحم تلك الأعين التي جرت دموعها لنا. Oh Allah, have mercy on those eyes that shed tears when they remember us. اللهم ارحم تلك القلوب التي احترقت وجزعت لنا. Oh Allah, have mercy on those hearts that are burnt when they remember the 10th day. Then he says something phenomenal. Ja'far al-Sadiq takes it to a next level. Do you know what he says? Allahumma inni astawdi'aka tilka al-anfus wa tilka al-abdan hatta turawiyahum min al-hawd yawm al-atash. Ya Allah, I leave you to look after those who honor the 10th of Muharram by you giving them water from the pool of Kawthar with your own hands. Yes? Allahumma inni astawdi'aka tilka al-anfus wa tilka al-abdan hatta turawiyahum min al-hawd yawm al-atash. Ya Allah, I'm not the one who's going to speak on their behalf. Imagine, all we rely on is the wasila of Ahlul Bayt, correct? Imam Sadiq says, no. The one who remembers Sayyid al-Shuhada and never lets the 10th be forgotten, I'm not responsible for him. I've asked Allah to quench his thirst from the pool of Kawthar. That person has to be honored. And that's why you find Imam al-Rada alayhi salam. Imam al-Rada could have easily said, well, you know what, Ashura, it's not that important. We don't really need to attend the majalis. You know what Imam al-Rada used to do? He'd sit Ibn al-Shabib. He'd sit Da'bal bin Ali al-Khuza'i. He'd sit them down. He'd say, recite and remind me of the 10th day. Yes? I want you to remind me of the 10th day because it softens my heart when I remember Abu Abdullah. And he tells Da'bal bin Ali al-Khuza'i, he says, Da'bal, recite for us poetry about the 10th day. Yes? Ahl al-Bayt, one by one, would make sure the 10th day would never be forgotten. They'd make sure that their companions would write poetry, their companions would organize majalis, their companions would write books about the 10th day. They wanted to ensure that we never allowed the 10th day to be forgotten. And that's why even after the ghaibah, you found the ulama of Ahl al-Bayt in the period of the occultation, each and every one of them would make an effort to be registered amongst those who protected the 10th day. Those who made sure that Ibn Ziyad did not finish the 10th day, Umar bin Sa'ad did not finish the 10th day, the Umayyad and Abbasid propaganda does not finish the 10th day. They made sure with their pens, with their wealth, with their health, that they would serve the 10th day. You think people like Shaykh al-Saduq or Shaykh al-Mufid, you think scholars like this in the period of the ghaibah, you think they were only ulama of jurisprudence? They only gave fiqh rulings? Even they used to give majalis in honor of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Yes? To them, and I will never forget, to them, the biggest honor for them was that the 10th day, they were able to give a majlis in honor of the Imam. Shaykh al-Mufid, if you read Amali al-Mufid, Shaykh al-Saduq, the Amali of Saduq, Shaykh al-Saduq would write books such as Kamil al-Ziyarat. His father, others would write books about the importance of the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein and never forgetting the 10th day. And that's why when you came later on, that 10th day became an inspiration in many ways. Yes? Socially, it was inspirational. Politically, it was inspirational. If you look at Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, may Allah bless his soul. Yes? He uses the 10th day as ammunition to speak out against the oppression of his time. You read the works of the likes of Shari'ati and Mutahari in the 70s. They use the 10th day and make it alive in order that that 10th day continue to motivate one another. And that's why you find even Allama Tabatabai, with all his greatness in writing tafsir, you'd find Allama Tabatabai himself, what would he say? He would say, they asked him, how many hours do you write tafsir a day? He'd say, 14 hours I would spend on tafsir a day. They said to him, every day? He said, every day, except the 10th day. That is for Abu Abdullah. Wonderful line. Every day, I write the tafsir in finishing al-Mizan. He said, but the 10th day, that day is a day we never forget. And that day, I put the pen down, and my thoughts are with Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Therefore, when you look at all of this, what does it show you? It shows you that tonight is a night for each and every one of us to write our names as being of those who protected the 10th day. Of those who Imam al-Sadiq said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, you quench their thirst. Of those who made sure that the man in Sham did not defeat the man in Karbala. And most importantly, of those who ensure that the man who said on the plains of Karbala, Hal min nasirin yansuruna, is there any helper to help us? It wasn't just on that front. It was a call for every generation. And tonight is your night to turn back and say, Labbayka ya Hussein. On a night like this, it's your chance to register yourself with those who protected the 10th of Muharram. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.